Today we are reading from Ephesians chapter 6, starting from verse 10 to verse 18. The whole armor of God. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I want us to talk about the armor of God, not as a concept that we memorize because that's from Bible school, but as something we actually live with. For many of us, the armor of God feels familiar, yet if you think about it, it's distant because we know the words, but when life gets heavy, we're not always sure how it fits into our everyday struggles. Paul wasn't writing this to sound poetic. He was writing to people who were tired, who were pressured, and trying to stay faithful in a difficult world. Life often feels like a battle. Even when nothing dramatic is happening, some of our hardest fights happen quietly in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our private moments. God knew this, and instead of telling us simply to try harder, he gave us something to put on. The armor of God is not about becoming aggressive or defensive. It's about being grounded, being protected, and being steady in the face of challenges. So Paul begins by reminding us to be strong in the Lord, not in ourselves. And this is important because self-strength has limits. We get tired, we get discouraged, we reach our capacity, our humanly capacity. God's strength, however, does not depend on our understanding or our energy. When we rely on God, we are supported by something greater than ourselves. So, firstly, the belt of truth is the first piece that is mentioned because truth holds everything together. Truth is not just information. It is what we choose to believe when emotions are loud and circumstances are confusing. And God presents his truth. Without truth, lies slip in and begin to shape how we see ourselves and God. But the belt of truth keeps us anchored. It reminds us of what God says, even when our feelings try to tell a different story. So the breastplate of righteousness is the second thing that Paul mentions. And it protects the heart. Spiritually, this means living without being crushed or feeling guilty or shameful. Righteousness is not about being perfect. It is about being covered by grace. When we forget this, we start defining ourselves by our mistakes instead of God's mercy. And the breastplate of righteousness reminds us that we are accepted, not because we earned it, but because God chose us. Another thing that Paul mentions is the shoes of peace, which allow us to stand firm and keep moving forward. When life has a way of trying to knock us off balance. That happens for everyone. Anxiety will urge us to rush, and fear will tell us to hold back or retreat. God's peace doesn't remove problems, but it gives us stability within the problems. When we walk in peace, we respond instead of reacting, and we move forward without losing ourselves along the way. The shield of faith is what protects us from the doubts and fears that come unexpectedly. Faith does not mean we never question or we never struggle. It means we choose to trust God's character even when the situation feels uncertain. We were speaking about gratitude yesterday. The shield doesn't stop challenges from coming. It stops them from defining us. And faith allows us to keep going even when the path is unclear. That is the true definition of faith, things that we do not see. Paul also mentions the helmet of salvation, which protects our minds. And this is where many battles are won or lost. Our thoughts shape our outlook, our decisions, and our confidence. Salvation reminds us who we belong to and where our identity is rooted. It guards us from believing that our worth is based on success, on productivity, or on approval from outside. When our mind is protected, our hearts and actions follow. This might be my favorite one. The sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And it gives us truth to stand on when lies arise. The word reminds us of God's promises when our emotions feel overwhelming. But the word must be known, and the word must be used, and the word must be read. It is not enough for it to exist somewhere nearby or sleep by it on a bedside. It must be part of our daily lives, shaping how we think and how we respond. I hope that this fasting season has taught us how important the word of God is. Paul ends by emphasizing prayer, because the armor is not something we put on once and forget. Prayer keeps us connected to God and aware of His presence. It is how the armor stays active and effective. Through prayer, we invite God into our struggles, into our decisions, into our uncertainties. The armor of God is not meant to make us feel fearful and tense and feel like we're going into battle, but it is meant to remind us that we are not unprotected, we are not abandoned, and we are not alone. God has already provided what we need to stand firm. We are not fighting for victory. We are standing in victory. The victory that He already secured. So, thank you for being here. May you walk forward strengthened. May you walk forward grounded. And may you be clothed in what God has already given you. Thank you for being here. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.